You have consumed more information in the last week than an average human being in the 17th century consumed in an entire lifetime. You have access to history's greatest mentors in your pocket. You bought that course that promised to change your career. You saved dozens of videos to watch later. And you have a stack of books on your nightstand that serve more as decoration than as sources of wisdom. And yet, if I placed a blank sheet of paper in front of you right now and asked you to explain in depth the most important concept you learned in the last 30 days, that sheet would likely remain blank. This is not a judgment on your intelligence. It is a diagnosis of your inefficiency. We are living through an epidemic of mental obesity. You consume, but you metabolize nothing. Information enters, generates a quick spike of dopamine, that pleasant feeling that you are progressing just by watching something smart, and then it evaporates, leaving only a residue of anxiety and the feeling that you are falling behind, no matter how fast you run. The hard truth is that motion is not progress. Being busy studying is not the same as learning. Most of us treat the brain like a hard drive, trying to cram in data until nothing else fits. But real learning, the kind that alters who you are and how much you are worth in the marketplace, isn't about accumulation. It's about biological and structural transformation. If you don't possess the right mental assets, the basic infrastructure of your psyche, the best content in the world will be useless to you. It's like trying to run state-of-the-art software on a computer from the 90s. The machine will crash, and you are crashing. You feel it, don't you? That brain fog when you try to concentrate for more than 10 minutes. The frustration of reading a page and, upon reaching the end, not remembering a single word from the beginning. The inability to connect dots and create original solutions. You don't need another speed reading method or another productivity hack. You need to fix the foundation. If you are tired of being a tourist in the world of knowledge and want to become a permanent resident of wisdom, you are in the right place. The Kokoro channel exists exactly for this. To stop the noise and start the signal. If you want to make this commitment to yourself, to leave superficiality behind, subscribe now. Don't do it for the algorithm. Do it as a symbolic act that you are ready to build a mind that actually works. What I'm going to present to you today aren't study tips. They are 5 mental assets, 5 resources you need to possess before opening the next book. Without them all, your effort is vanity. With them, learning becomes inevitable. But to understand what these assets are, first we need to understand why your current biology is sabotaging your every attempt to evolve. And it's not the fault of your laziness. It is something much deeper and invisible. The problem starts with a fundamental design flaw. Your brain did unevolve to seek truth or academic excellence. It evolved to ensure you don't die. And in the economy of survival, spending unnecessary energy is a mortal risk. Learning. Neuroplasticity, which is the physical ability to create new neural connections, is a metabolically expensive process. It hurts. It demands effort. When you feel that mental exhaustion while trying to grasp a complex concept, it's your brain screaming at you to stop and return to the safety of what is already known. This is where the great invisible saboteur comes in. The illusion of competence. It happens all the time. You read a chapter of a book, underline the important parts, and feel like you understood. When you revisit that text days later and reread your highlights, your brain recognizes the words and says, "Oh, I already know this," but you don't know it. You only recognize it. Familiarity is not mastery. Recognizing information when it is presented to you is a passive and easy process. Being able to retrieve that information from nothing and apply it in a new context is an active and difficult process. And your biology will always choose the easy path unless you intervene. We have created a society that feeds this bias towards comfort. Social media, streaming, short news, everything is designed to create a passive flow. You have become a spectator of your own intellectual life. Every time you pick up your phone to check a notification in the middle of a difficult reading, you aren't just distracting yourself. You are training your brain to give up at the first barrier of cognitive friction. You are teaching your mind that boredom and difficulty are enemies to be avoided rather than signs that growth is happening. Neuroscientifically, learning only occurs when there is focus, engagement, and crucially, error. Error signals to the nervous system that the current model of reality is insufficient and needs to be updated. If you only consume content that confirms what you already think or that is easy to digest, you deprive your brain of the chemical trigger necessary for change. You think you are learning, but you are just entertaining your intellect. And the danger lies in the silence of this process. No one warns you that your capacity for deep attention is there is no alarm that sounds when your working memory loses power. You just realize years later that you've become incapable of reading a classic, learning a new language, or mastering a new technical skill necessary for your job. You become obsolete, not because you lacked resources, but because your internal machine lost the ability to process them. The root of the problem, therefore, isn't a lack of time. It's a lack of cognitive endurance. You lost the ability to tolerate the discomfort of not knowing. And in a world that changes at the speed of light, if you cannot handle the discomfort of learning, you are condemned to stagnation. But the real cost of this stagnation is much higher than just missing a promotion or failing a test. The hole is much deeper. If passive learning is a silent disease, the long-term result is a slow death of your relevance. And here is the alarming discovery that most people try to ignore: the gap between those who know how to learn and those who merely consume information is linear. It is exponential. Think of compound interest. In the financial world, those who start investing early have disproportionate returns later on. In the intellectual world, it works exactly the same way, but the reverse is cruelly true. Every day you spend operating in energy-saving mode, avoiding deep learning, you aren't just staying in the same place. You're getting exponentially stupider relative to the complexity of the world. Knowledge has a half-life. What you learned in college 5 or 10 years ago is already in the process of decomposition. Skills that guaranteed employment in the last decade are today commoditized or performed by algorithms. If your ability to learn new skills isn't faster than the speed at which the market changes, you are becoming obsolete in real time. You are becoming a living museum piece. The scenario is brutal. We are heading toward a division of cognitive castes. On one side, a minority possessing the mental assets to unlearn and relearn quickly, navigating chaos and generating unique value. On the other, a gigantic mass of anxious people, full of useless information, unable to focus for 15 minutes, who will be relegated to operational and repetitive roles until those two disappear. It's not just about money or career, it's about autonomy. If you cannot learn on your own, you become dependent on those who know. dependent on the opinions of others because you cannot analyze facts, dependent on systems you don't understand. The inability to learn is the modern form of servitude. Imagine reaching 40 or 50 and realizing that the world speaks a language you no longer understand. Feeling that no matter how hard you try, you cannot keep up with the conversation, the technology, the new social dynamics. This sensation of chronic inadequacy is the inevitable fate of those who neglect the musculature of learning. It is the pain of seeing your potential everything you could have been wither in the face of the reality of what you have become through pure inertia. The cost of inaction isn't falling behind. The cost is losing sovereignty over your own mind. It is becoming a passive passenger in history written by people who cultivated the discipline you ignored. And the worst part, time doesn't stop to wait for you to feel ready. The world's complexity won't decrease to accommodate your cognitive laziness. You need to decide right now which side of this divide you are going to be on, because inertia has chosen for you up until today, and the result is not promising. If you want to take back control, you need to stop fighting against your nature and start using the right tools. You need to stop trying to break down the wall with your head and start looking for the door. And the door opens with the 5 mental assets we are about to detail. Knowing that you are becoming obsolete is terrifying, but unfortunately, fear alone doesn't sustain discipline. This is where most people lock up. You understand the logic. You feel the urgency. You promise that Monday will be different. You buy the new notebook, organize the desk, download the Focus app, and then you sit down to study. For the first 3 minutes, everything goes well. But at 5 minutes, something starts to itch inside your skull. The silence becomes deafening. A diffuse anxiety rises in your chest. Your hand, almost of its own volition, moves toward your phone. Just a quick look. You lie to yourself. Half an hour later, you are scrolling through a social media feed, numb with that bitter taste of defeat in your throat. What happened here wasn't a lack of character. It was withdrawal. Your brain has been conditioned to operate on extremely high levels of artificial stimulation. When you remove the noise and try to focus on something complex and slow as deep learning demands, your system goes into shock. The boredom you feel isn't just boring. It is physical pain. It's your brain screaming for the next fix of easy dopamine. You're trying to run a marathon with a body addicted to sugar. The fight intensifies because you are trying to win a biological war using only willpower. And willpower is a finite resource, a small battery that drains with the first decisions of the day. You spend your reserve of will deciding what to wear, what to eat, answering emails. When the time comes to learn, the tank is empty. You are bringing a pocket knife to a gunfight. This is where the cycle of self-sabotage is born. You fail, you feel guilty, and to relieve the guilt, you seek distraction, which leads to more failure. You start to believe that you just aren't cut out for this, that you don't have the gift. Nonsense. No one is born with the gift of focus in a world designed to distract. Concentration is a conquest, not an endowment. The fatal error is believing that one day you will feel like doing what is difficult. Spoiler, that day will never come. Our primitive system will always prefer immediate comfort over future reward. Waiting for motivation is the strategy of amateurs. Professionals, masters, the wise, they don't depend on how they feel. They depend on systems. They depend on mental structures that make execution inevitable, regardless of emotional state. If you continue depending on having a good day to evolve, your growth will be erratic and mediocre. You need something more solid than motivation. You need assets. Assets are resources that work for you, that sustain your structure when willingness fails. Without them, you will continue in this loop of initial enthusiasm followed by silent abandonment, accumulating unfinished projects and wasted potential. Enough fighting against your biology with the wrong weapons. Let's stop trying to force the door and let's unlock it. There are 5 keys, 5 mental assets that, once installed, change your brain's relationship with effort. They transform learning from a painful burden into an unfair advantage. To get out of this maze, you don't need more intelligence. You need to install these 5 mental assets now. They are the basis of any high-performance mind. Without them, you are just a hoarder of doubts. The first asset is ruthless curiosity. Stop trying to drink the ocean through a straw. The secret of great thinkers isn't how much they know, but what they ignore. In a world of infinite information, clarity is power. Define right now the single subject that will change your game in the next 3 months and mercilessly eliminate everything else. If it doesn't move you closer to your goal, it's noise. Learn to say no to interesting knowledge so you can say yes to vital knowledge. The second asset is Shoshin, or the beginner's mind. Your ego is the enemy of your learning. That moment you think, I already know, this is the moment you stop evolving. Real masters approach even the basics with curiosity and respect. Knock down the house of cards of your intellectual arrogance. Assume you know nothing. The cup needs to be emptied to be filled. The smartest question you can ask is a simple and honest why. The third asset is tolerance for boredom. This is the superpower of the 21st century. While the crowd runs to their phones at the first sign of silence, you remain. Learn to sit with difficulty when the text gets complex, when the lecture gets dense, when the urge to quit hits. Understand, this is growing pain. It is neuroplasticity happening in real time. Those who can cross the desert of boredom reach the oasis of deep understanding. Love the plateau, for it is there that the foundation is built. The fourth asset is Stop acting on autopilot. You need to become the manager of your own mental factory. Observe how you learn. During what hours are you most productive? Where did you get stuck? Why did you forget? Don't just be the student. Be the scientist, analyzing your own brain. Reflect on the process, not just the content. Adjust course daily. And finally, the fifth asset, radical application. Knowledge without action is not wisdom. It is merely philosophical gossip. You haven't learned anything until your behavior has changed. For every hour of theory, dedicate 3 hours of practice. Get your hands dirty. Fail fast. Fail cheap. But fail while acting. The world doesn't pay for what you know. It pays for what you do with what you know. Transform every insight into an immediate experiment in your real life. Learning is not an event. It is a lifestyle. It is the only possible revolt against obsolescence. By cultivating these assets, you cease to be a victim of the algorithm and regain sovereignty over your consciousness. You stop being a passive consumer and become an active constructor of your own reality. If you made it this far, you have already demonstrated something that 99% of the people who clicked on this video do not have the capacity to finish what you start. I want to know who the true residents of this channel are. Those who aren't here to play. Go to the comments now and write just 2 words. Mental sovereignty. That is our password. When I read that, I'll know you got the message and that you are committed to transforming information into power. The road is long, but now you have the map. I'll see you at the top.